The biggest practical thing that that I want to encourage you to do is to reformat your reading, is to prepare your reading and print it out and bring. I'm a big proponent for preparing your reading so that it's easy for you to read, so that the actual text on the page helps you to read it well, and then bringing up bringing up your reading as a piece of paper that you're going to read in nice clear font. You can do that in a way that's not scratch a piece of paper that you pull out of your pocket and unfold, and it's all. You can do it in a way so it keeps the sort of formality of it. Whether it's so when I'm doing a read, I might bring it up in a folder, or on a, or I'll make sure I keep it on a clipboard so that it all stays nice and pristine. But I thought I'd show you with a bit of screen sharing how my method of formatting the text and why it's helpful. Okay, now what's your passage, Stephen? It was Exodus 3.
I was really going to say Moses 3. It's Exodus 3, 1 to 14.
Okay, so first thing I do is you make sure it's in the right translation, ESV, and okay, and then what I do once I've got here, I get rid of verse numbers. Okay, once you're confident you've got the right passage, I get rid of verse numbers, and then I'm going to select this and pop it into. Why is that not showing up? Okay, I'm just doing in a Google Doc. Right? Can you see that? Is the Google Doc up for everyone? Sorry, I can't see you at the moment. So if you're all nodding and saying yes, or
yeah, we can see it.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And then I'll select all, and I'll get rid of all the formatting. Boom. So there's just a little, all right. And then I will make that font 14 at least. Okay. Now these are just principles. So and you can do it your own way. But this is impossible to read, right? This giant big slab of text. So I'm going to break it up, and I'm just going to do a section of it, and I'm going to break it up so you can see how I would try to format this in a way so that's helpful for me to read. So, and what I'll do is I read it out loud as I'm doing it, and then I hear where the natural breaks are and how I can break it up. Obviously, the first place you want to break up is sentences, right? So let's work on just this. So now Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. Right? Already, that's a challenge. And he led his flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. Okay, 3 things in there. You've got, now Moses was keeping the flock of this person, and he led his flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. Right? So actually, this is broken up into 3 parts. Now, to this first sentence, it's not helpful to go priest of Midian, so I want to break somewhere. Of his father of, I might go here, so that this is on a line. So now Moses was keeping the flock of, actually, let's change that because it's a bit of a leap. Here, I'll break it up here. And then what I do is I might justify that there. Now my eyes go from, now Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, and then it goes down like a step, I think of it like a water pouring down the steps. the priest of Midian. So now my eye follows that across from left to right, and I finish on the end of a thought, and then it's the next thought. And he led his flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. Now you could put this third one here, so it does the same sort of thing. That's one way of doing it. Or you can, if you want to make that third point a separate one, you could keep it justified to the left. And so now when I read it, I say, now Moses was keeping the flock of his father. So then that's, okay, just flock of his father-in-law. Even that, I just say that over and over again, flock of his father-in-law, flock of his father-in-law. Okay. Now Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law, Jethro, the priest of Midian. And he led his flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. Okay. And then I leave a space. So this is one thought, one sentence. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. Sentence here. So where's the natural place to break it? Does anyone put your speaker on? Where do you think is a spot I could break up this sentence so that it doesn't?
I'll break it up. So, and the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. So out of the midst. So after fire, I would have thought to break it up.
That's one spot. Yep. So you could do it there. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. And that little micro, that your eye moving from there and speaking, you will naturally put in a micro pause. And so you want to, the reason why you want to format it this way, so those micro pauses are just the natural spots where they should be. You could also put, and the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of the bush. But I feel like the way you've got suggested then is much more, that's much more natural. And then if you want, have a space. What you will then get is your text will go now, as you can imagine, over a couple of pages, maybe 3 pages, maybe 4 pages. If it's turning into something that long, put it in a folder, but don't feel bad about it actually going over a long pages, because the goal is that you can just look down and see this, and it will naturally, the way you read it is actually represented in how it looks visually on the page. So I'll just do a couple more lines till we get to the back and forth dialogue, because that's helpful. So he looked, and he looked, and behold, the bush was burning, yet it was not consumed. Okay, now that fits all on one line. So you could keep it, but if you want, you could also break it up if you feel like, for your own reading of it. See that? He looked, and behold, and you could even do this. He looked, and behold, the bush was burning, yet it was not consumed. The way I broke that up forces me to break up the sentence to read it in a way to help people comprehend what's going on. You could even do things like this. He looked, and behold, the bush was burning. Like, you can have those moments of pause, to build dramatic tension, because you don't want to go, Angelie, you don't want to read with the same pace when something amazing is happening, where he would be drawn in and looking. You want to actually read in a way that is appropriate for the what's actually happening. And that's very true. For the difference here is, now Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, and he led his flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. That's all just pretty much ho-hum. This is just telling the story. And then all of a sudden, and the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush, right? Something very different in tone is happening here.
Mm.
You don't want the tone of that line to be like the tone of the lines before it. Otherwise, the hearer will think, oh, this is just an ordinary day and angels just appear everywhere and that's nothing special. The text definitely wants you to be amazed by this because that's so unusual for there to be a bush that was burning, yet it was not consumed. So breaking it up in this way, which looks, this line that could fit on one line, when you break it up like that, actually sort of helps communicate the tone of it, even just in the way it's written on the page. Does that help or make sense?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it does.
Super helpful, yeah.
Yeah, like the
then
first bit of just sort of that intro, which doesn't need any real passion. It's just is what it is.
Yep.
Whereas, like you said, yeah, then things like the angel of the Lord appeared to him, and the bush was burning but not burning up, is obviously of interest and should sort of pique our ears.
Yep. When dialogue comes along, usually what I do is I keep the saids and put it on a new line. So, and Moses said, and then I've got this clear thing of what's being, all right. So I might go, and Moses said, I will turn aside to see this great sight, why the bush is not burned. I bet he didn't say that, really. He's just going. It's clearly narrative style, right? It's writing here. And then when the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called out to him in the bush, right? So you want to break there so that his line separate, and then natural place to break right there. And then you could even make that, if you like, that flow effect. So now it's when the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush. And then Moses. And there's a natural pause because your eyes have to go from bush down to here, but that's an appropriate pause to make Moses have the drama that it deserves. And then he said, here I am. Now, because it's so short, you could just leave it like that. And then he said, do not come here, take. All right, so see how I'm breaking that up is now making it look almost like a script. All right, so and he said, I'm, all right. Okay. And he said,
would you break up, say, for example, do not come near, take your sandals off your feet, as it like,
yeah,
like do not come near is the warning, and then you have the instruction, if that makes sense.
And sometimes, even though it's got a semicolon there and no capital there, I might change that for my own eyes.
Yeah.
So I see that as 2 points, and you could do that if you wanted to, but that would probably be enough for me to just see them as two separate points. Now it's not sacrilegious because there were no full stops and capitals. There were other indicators as to the grammar, but yes, those little things you can do. You can put things in brackets, and that's anything that's helpful for you to read it correctly. Now here's one. I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. It's whenever I come across something that is a list and is given as a sort of with a rhythm of a list, I represent it visually. So I'm the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, right? And you could even just tab them if you want or something like that. But do you see what that does? Look at that. You see the rhythm. Could even If you want to be a real pedantic one, you could do it like that.
I was going to say bullet points.
Yeah. If that helps. Remember, think of this like you're constructing sheet music, right? When those musicians get up and they play their sheet music, you don't see that. You don't see the little bits where it's got, play strong and all the different little indicators in sheet music that tells musicians how to play.
Yeah.
You're just hearing the music. And so creating this, and he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. Then look at this. Beautiful. What a nice place to have a page break. Right? It's a conclusion of God's introduced himself and Moses has responded. And now we're on. Then when your eyes go to the top of the next page, then it's a natural spot. The worst thing to do is be halfway through a sentence or halfway through a point. If that was the case and this was the natural place for the beginning, I would even make a page break like that and leave a nice big gap if need be. So there we go. So now look at that. That is a new, it's no longer a slab. It's now sheet music. It teaches you how to, just by looking at it, you get a sense of the flow of what's happening. And when there's a big, like, just say this was a big, put 3 spaces if you want to break up the sections or things like that. Anything that is helpful for your brain to just look at the text and know what's happening, that will inform your reading of it.
Yeah.
Any thoughts or response to that?
I like it. I think that's a good way of doing it, especially I think because reading the text, I'm mindful of commas, full stops, and trying to, those are your breathing breaks too.
Yep.
To use those. But I like, this is a nice visual way of, especially when you're not under pressure, but you're doing in front of everyone, and you're trying to do a good job of it. Especially because of the importance of the Lord's word. It just takes that one variable off you.
The other thing you can do here is put what you would say as your intro. And that may be, we can discuss that, but maybe something you get some advice of how they want you to introduce it. If they want you to introduce it at all, how do I get out of this? I'm trying to get out of there.
It'd be on your, maybe at the top of your screen.
Oh, there we go. Zoom. There we go. I'm back in Zoom. And stop sharing. There we go. So you can have just a simple intro like what I do at church is just, hi, my name's Simon. It's my privilege to read God's word to you. And today I'll be reading this from this translation. And that can be it. If you want it short and sweet and give people time to look it up and then read. But hopefully you see the benefit in formatting your text. And then the other thing you do as you're formatting, you're thinking about the text. The other great thing about it is why I don't just prepare the things and go, here, I've pre-formatted it for you. And sometimes people have said to me, oh, wouldn't it be great? Why don't you bring out a whole, like the New Testament formatted for Bible reading? And part of the reasons why I resist that is because of the benefit of actually going through it line by line and thinking about where the flow of how the thing flows. And you may have a different style to me too, in terms of how you format it on the page. And but definitely going through it is part of the preparation. The formatting process helps you engage with the ideas and go, oh yeah, I think that needs a break there. And or I want to emphasize that gives you the opportunity then to bold things if you see a reoccurring word that you want to make sure there's a mirroring between, oh, I've said that and now I'm going to say this. Helps you, you can underline and highlight and that sort of stuff if that's your way of representing it visually. And then when you print it out, you can handwrite notes on it if you want to put on the side some, the emotional content of how you want to read it, or emphasize or star if something's really important. You've got all those options with formatting. Sometimes people feel like the text not bringing up a Bible is not bringing up the Bible. And the thing I just want to encourage you is that the Bible that you've got, that you might be reading from, was probably printed in China. Like it's words, God's word, but printed with ink on paper, just like you printing that out in your office. It's still God's word. And as long as you treat it as God's word, then your hearers won't treat it as anything less. And if you and that's why you don't pull it out as a crumpled piece of paper out of your back pocket, because that says something about what you're about to speak. It's also another reason why I don't like reading from phones for Bible reading, because I think when people see someone on a phone, just communicates something about what they're doing. We all see this image and we think, what are they checking Facebook? Are they, it doesn't give that sense of this is God's word being spoken. That may be a cultural thing, and some people like reading from a tablet might be a good compromise, but it always relies on I like low tech, because how many times have you seen someone go, oh, sorry, it's just I've just lost the page or something like that. So having it nice and clear and printed in a big font, and number your pages. That was the other thing I should have done on that. Number your pages. I've learnt that lesson when I've gone up and my pages got mixed up, and I'm like, whereas if you've got a number on your page, even if you're handwriting it, if you've forgotten, that's really helpful.
Can I ask
cool.
a question, Simon? Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
please.
That was really helpful. I've never been shown to format, text or paragraphs in such a way. So thank you so much for that. Cool. And just looking at that, and when you were saying before, you said someone asked you, oh, perhaps you could format, each passage for to become easier for people to read it as such. But it's almost like you just showing us that, formatting it that way. It's almost like it trains you. It seems to me that would train you in a way that when you go back to the text in its normal format, that would come more natural.
Yes, absolutely. You start to see the breaks, even if they're not represented on the page, because you've thought about the text in that way. Yeah. And when it's a list, even though if it's in the columns on a bar, in a normal Bible, you start to read them as a list, just because you're exactly right. I've never thought of it, but it does, because you train yourself doing that over and over and again. Then when you come to the Bible, I can read a passage cold from the Bible unformatted much better than I ever used to be able to, because I've gone through that process. But I'm preparing at the moment the book of Ecclesiastes that I'll be reading at Monash Uni for their Christian group there. And earlier in the year, I did a full, and so that'll be an hour-long reading of the whole book of Ecclesiastes. Earlier this year, I did a whole book reading of Revelation, which is a 2-hour reading.
Oh
And a
my
couple of
God.
years ago, I did a full 3-hour reading of the Gospel of John. Every single word I went through and reformatted. And that took some months. But it was so helpful, like, as you can imagine, right? And it allowed me to put lots of things in there to help for those, what I call epic readings. But if I'm doing that, or I'm doing just a paragraph at church, I will do this formatting. There's a let's see if I can find it. Window. I thought I had. That's right. I had one that I did just the other week, a PDF of it, but it's gone. But yeah, so I will do it all the time, and I encourage you over the next week, do that with your text. Over the next few days, if you want to, but go through, cut and paste from Bible Gateway or wherever, and go through the text slowly. Get to know your passage that way, and that will really help so many things, but it will help with that primary principle of clarity, because you'll be reading it in a way that's where the rhythm of your reading will be represented on the page, and that will help communicate a lot.